Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Gold Hoops and God podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Guerra. This episode is going to be fabulous. I have with me today the lovely Grace Agostino. Hi, Grace.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm so excited to have you. So Grace has such incredible experience. She has over 30 years in radio. It's very amazing. She is very active with Radio Inc., and she's actually a finalist for the Medallas de Cortés, which is very exciting. Yes.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. It's a very prestigious award.
Yes.
And I am in incredible company here among so many leading ladies and gentlemen of radio.
So good. That's really exciting. And so in addition to all of her experience in radio, and especially in advertising, she's also, most importantly, a mom. So she's a mom of 3, and we were chatting before the episode a little bit about that. So super excited to chat with you a little more, and we'll dive right in. So let's see.
Let's go.
Yeah. So each episode, I always ask my guests to do a little self-reflection in terms of culture. Like, we Latinas are so diverse, and that's one of the things that I really want to highlight through this podcast is our diversity. We're not a monolith. We're not all the same. Our experiences are not all the same. And so I really enjoy hearing about each person's experience, like where they grew up, how they grew up, what was identity like in terms of what were the conversations at home, because I think every household is a little bit different in terms of whether identity is even mentioned or not, right? If it's a thing. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Grace, and I'd love to hear more.
So I identify as a Cuban American. Growing up, my parents said that I was Cuban, right? However, having been born in the United States and understanding the struggle that Cuban people have on the island, I found it to be incredibly, especially as I got older, that it was kind of disrespectful to call myself Cuban when I had no idea. And I lived in a bubble here in the United States, right? We have creature comforts, we have television, we get paid very well, we have, modern technology and cars. So I am a Cuban American. I am proudly Cuban. I am just so grateful for the opportunity to be a first generation American here. And understanding the deep responsibility to not only the diaspora, the folks that are here, but really the folks back home that haven't gotten this opportunity yet. So I'm excited to be part of a mission like this and part of this pod because I think that the more we talk about it, the more awareness that we create for our people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I really love that. So I've had the privilege of getting to know like several Cuban Americans over the years. And that's actually one of the things that I really love about Cubans and Cuban Americans is there's a deep sense of pride. It's like that love for the island. And what I think is so interesting is like, even if a person hasn't been able to visit, obviously for a whole slew of reasons, right? Especially with Cuba, it's a very political situation. And so even that concept of like having love for a place that you've never been to, I think is very beautiful. It's very powerful. Yeah, I think it's amazing. And of course we have like such a huge diaspora, like for example, in Miami, it's a huge Cuban American population, which is really cool.
Yeah, nice. There's some folks in New Jersey. New York still has a couple of people as well. I'm here in New York. And it's fun to meet fellow New York Cubans because we are far and few between. I mean, really, there are so little of us here. So whenever a Cuban meets another Cuban, it's Cuban American or Cuban, there's a great bond formed pretty quickly.
Totally. Yeah, it's exciting. Yeah, I've shared on the podcast before. So I grew up in Los Angeles and my family's Guatemalan Ecuadorian, and there's not a ton of either in Los Angeles, right? Los Angeles is predominantly Mexican American, Chicano, et cetera. And so whenever I'd meet someone, out and about, I'd be like, oh my God, you're Ecuadorian. Oh my gosh, like you're Guatemalan. So I totally get it. Yeah.
That's funny.
That's so great. So let's see. So I'm curious, like growing up at home, were there certain traditions that your family would kind of maintain as far as being Cuban and Cuban American? Like, if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit of that, that would be awesome.
Absolutely. Actually, my parents belonged to an organization called La Sociedad Cubana de Queens.
Ooh,
so we were
I love
from Queens, and there was sort of like a membership club.
Oh, nice.
A social club, if you will, where they would gather. And my parents were pretty strict. So they would drag, most of the folks that were part of this club were older.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple times a year, everyone would gather with their family and you would meet other kids and younger people.
Yeah.
Especially New Year's Eve, they used to have this huge
Like a
celebration.
social. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
it was
Oh, that's
amazing.
great.
And it would always be at a fancy venue and everyone got dressed up and it was a lot of fun. I learned how to dance because dancing is very important for what we do. And I learned how to dance with older people, right? That really knew all those
how to dance,
traditional,
right?
and they know how to dance, right?
That's so good.
So that organization that we were part of really cemented all those roots, right? You're constantly being talked to about the revolution and Castro and, you know, part of it, you know, starts creating that sort of hatred for the people that started all that and caused all of that. But at the same time, you have this gratitude because without that, we wouldn't be here, right? We wouldn't be in the US. We'd still be over there.
It's complicated.
So it's very interesting how something so dark can also create brightness and love. Because I think that's what unites us all is that deep, you know, disdain and sadness. And we know how to turn it into joy and community. So very cool.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, you know, it's complicated. That's one of the things. So this is really interesting, and you'll let me know what you think about this.
Of course.
I know that as far as like Cuban Americans and Cuban identity, Caridad del Cobre is very important.
Yeah.
And so I've heard a couple like theologians talk about how, you know, she's so significant because she actually serves as a bridge. In other words, like whatever, you know, side on the political spectrum a person is on, there's something very unifying or bonding about her, especially because of the ties to like, you know, Yoruban tradition and that kind of thing. You know, she's mysterious in a way, right?
Right.
Because she's Catholic and yet not, right? There's a lot going on there. So I'm curious to hear from you, sort of like if that was present, you know, growing up in your community, and kind of just what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, so you know, a lot of the Cuban men always had the gold chain with the San Lázaro, which was you know. Lazarus with all of his skin lesions that he had. And so that was a thing. And Caridad del Cobre used to be on everybody's wall, right? So that was like our, you know, Guadalupe for folks that are Mexican. And I believe every country has their Virgen, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not well versed on that, so I don't want to misspeak. But for us, for sure, they also had candles in the house, right? Those candles that you get at the Botanica. Oh my gosh. So my mother had Santa Barbara, which was the one she would pray to when she had whatever. I wouldn't know why she was praying to her, but she was praying to Santa Barbara's, you know, candles. So we had those candles in the house. I did receive exposure to folks that were santeros. I'll never forget when some of their friends even started transitioning. And then those relationships sort of became broken because of that, because my mother wanted none of that influencing her kids or, so she felt like that was just not a good, let's say,
a good energy, good vibe.
Right. And you know, she witnessed some of the rituals and things like that, so that kind of that was not her vibe. And so I think just like me, right, she leaned more into the Catholicism for that reason. So I went to Catholic school pretty much my entire life. Elementary through high school.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. And so I rebelled by not putting my own children in Catholic school until now, which is very
interesting.
Funny.
Wow.
Yes.
Fascinating.
Well, I think that anytime we're really struggling in our lives, we tend to look for something to, you know, pray to and bind to. And for sure, when things started going sideways, even in our own communities, I found that prayer and getting closer to God was very helpful, not only for myself, but for my kids, for sure. I have one that's still in public school, and I could tell the difference.
Really?
He's sort of more, he's a scientist.
Okay.
So they tend to be a little bit more I'm going to challenge that, where
Yeah.
we tend to have a blinder faith because
Mm-hmm.
some of it is taught, right? We
Yeah.
have this blind faith because we're taught. But right now we celebrated Easter.
Mm-hmm.
And so two of my kids and I will watch The Passion of
Mm-hmm.
the Christ, which with
Oh,
Jim Caviezel, that was a Mel
yeah.
Gibson movie. I mean, I'm like sobbing through the whole thing and going, look what
Yeah.
he did for us.
It's very intense. Yes.
It's
Yes.
very
It's a
intense
powerful
and
film. It is a powerful film
so
for sure.
powerful.
Yeah.
And so, by the way, there's going to be a sequel now.
Oh, is it really?
So
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
Jim Caviezel actually was just on a pod and he
Oh,
was talking
oh.
about it. I think it's the resurrection of the Christ, if I'm not
Wow.
mistaken. So very powerful
Wow.
imagery and all of
Yes.
that kind of really, that movie brings it home.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is
Yeah.
super powerful. I hadn't heard about the new
Resurrection.
film.
It's
Wow.
coming.
Very amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's so interesting. One of the things I learned, and I think it makes so much sense, that way back when, like, especially like, in the medieval church, etc., that science and theology were hand in hand. It's just kind of a more recent phenomenon that we separate and we almost pit them against each other. We're like, oh, science is over here, religion's over here. If a person is a person of faith, or if they're religious, that means they don't believe in science. Like, no, that's not necessarily true, right?
Right.
You can be, in other words, you can be a person of faith and still, go to medical doctors and still take antibiotics, whatever, right? Whatever the case may be.
Right.
But I find it, yeah, I think that's so important for people to remember that they used to be one and the same, right? Science and faith, or science and religion, were hand in hand. And actually theology used to be called the queen of the sciences. So it's really,
I didn't
yeah.
know that.
It's pretty cool. Yes. So for example, I always like to bring up, like somebody like Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz, who was she 17th century? I think she was 17th century. But yeah, she, was a poet. She did it all, right? She was a poet, she was a scientist, she was, doing theology, she was writing music, writing plays, such a creative, phenomenal person, amazing woman. But that's the whole thing, right? It's like that all of these things can coexist, right? A person can be multifaceted, and all these things can coexist, and we don't have to leave any part of ourselves at the door.
It's funny that you say that, because I had a friend that was super, and I said I would never be friends with somebody who's an atheist, because that really doesn't align with me and my values at all.
Right.
Especially as you get older, right? Our values were very negotiable when we were younger.
Yeah.
We're learning, we're exploring, we're doing a lot of crazy things.
Totally.
So I couldn't align with his philosophy about religion, because he was so, this is a problem even in politics, right? We're either all the way to the left or we're all the way to the right.
Extreme. Mm-hmm.
And so he did not leave any room whatsoever for a belief in God. He thought it was outrageous and unreasable. And if you really think about it, it's so stupid. Well, fast forward to, he finally has his first baby. And now the guy is going to church all the time. And going, oh my God, do you want to go to church together? And I said, oh, is
this
that
is
because
interesting.
You had a baby, or you're a father now? So that miracle of life really changed his perspective about, because how do you explain that? Now, when I was back in high school, I actually wrote a paper about the Big Bang Theory.
Oh, wow.
And, how it really conflicts with what we learn about creation. Well, by the way, I failed that paper because
oh my gosh,
my Catholic high school was not aligned with the messaging at the time. So it's funny, because in modern day education, if you were to write a paper like that now, it would get an A for sure. I also wrote a paper about Shakespeare being homosexual, but that I got a D for that one.
Oh no!
And so I feel like modern
you were ahead of your time.
I was ahead of my time. I swear to God.
That's all. You were innovative. They couldn't handle it.
They could not handle it, and it's so funny.
Oh my
because
gosh!
Even the prophets and the people who inspired the writing of the Bible as we know it, those people were probably thought of as crazy, right? So here we are, crazy Gracie.
It's crazy until it works, right? It's crazy until people start like realizing, like, oh, maybe she was right. Yeah, I think I may have said the exact same thing on another episode that I filmed recently. That prophets are not welcome in their own hometown. Nobody likes the prophets, right? Nobody wants them around. They're like, oh, stop with that craziness. Like, what are you talking about? Like, what are you making up? Da 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 da. Until they realize, like, oh wait, maybe she was right.
Right. So I don't know if you've heard this. There's a young man that's up for canonization.
Yes, he's kind of an internet phenomenon. Yes,
oh my gosh, my kids actually talk about religion. They are fascinated by this, and they're so excited. It's encouraging for them because, obviously, no one wants to be canonized for obvious reasons, but they are just so in awe of this child and his miracles. And
it's so cool. Yeah.
Again, anything that can make people happy and looking forward instead of, I just think that it's very important.
Absolutely.
So you have to have something.
You got to have something, 1,000%. Like I would say that, in my own faith journey, like I was raised Catholic, definitely had my moments of struggle, my moments of doubt, even exploring other religions. I was like, maybe something else is going to align better, et cetera, et cetera. What I've come to realize, and I'm like in my early 40s, more or less, is that there is wisdom I can see the wisdom, right? I can see the pearls of wisdom in all these traditions. There's so much there. And yet, right, it's almost like with its issues, I won't say there's not issues, even with its issues, the Catholic Church feels like home. It's always felt like home. And I know that may be hard for people to like, how can I explain this? That might seem kind of difficult to accept. And I've actually had people ask me, like, how can you still be Catholic? Like, you're so educated. Right? How can you still believe with all the things that have happened? There is the Catholic Church, and then there's also faith. Like, there is that relationship that I understand that I cannot exactly articulate to other people. In that sense of like, I know that I know, there's been so many things that have happened, especially in the last couple of years. It's like, I know God was watching my back, like there's no way. There's certain situations I know that I never would have made it out alive. Like there's, it's so many things, but I'm like, yeah, 100%. It's something deeper, it's something deeper. And perhaps that just comes with growing up, and that perhaps that just comes with like, maybe like, for example, like for your friend, it was that moment of parenthood, right? That was the shift. That was like the wake up aha moment of like, oh wow, I see it all differently now. And that's cool. You know what I mean? And that's super cool. I think that each one, again, everybody has their road. I think everyone has such a unique path and road, that it's part of the journey. So,
and I have to add that one of the things that I've learned about Catholicism, at least from my journey and my perspective, is that the Catholic faith, the church, and even the school systems, they teach our children about other religions. They talk about Muhammad and his journey and how he became the prophet for them and all of that. They talk about Judaism. Yeah. I don't know that other religions do that. I have a lot of, I think I have more Jewish friends than Catholic friends, as a matter of fact. And I don't get that perspective from them, that they, go into our stuff as much. Right. And I think, for the Jewish people, it's because, it's 5 books and they're done. And for us, our journey goes on till the end of the world. Right. Right. So, and I may be misspeaking there, but it's a different perspective. But we have so much similarity, and my kids love it. They went to their first bat mitzvah. My girlfriend is Jewish, and so her daughter, that's their rite of passage. You turn 13 and they have a big celebration for you, and it's a renewal of your faith and the commitment, recommitment. And it was so beautiful. And so one of the things that I love about Jewish people is that they're a united people. Greeks are the same way. Greeks and Greek Orthodox, their communities are so, and unfortunately for us with Catholicism and even Hispanics, right? We're from so many different countries. We're not a monolith. Yeah. We speak all different dialects. And so that unity is lacking. And that's something that I wish Catholicism would do a better job with. Totally. and Pope Francisco was actually really good at that.
I know. Yeah.
So I'm curious to see who we're going to wind up with, because
Mm-hmm.
He was just like a little bit more forward thinking and more
Yes. He was
unifying.
progressive.
So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Exactly. I agree with you. It's true. So for example, if we get specific, like Armenian Orthodox, Greek
Yes.
Orthodox, the Ethiopian, like Coptic churches, right? I think it's specific and it's very beautiful because it's not only the church tradition or faith tradition,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also the culture hand in hand, right? Certainly in a lot of the churches, the families grow up together, the kids grow up together, they go to school together at the same school, right? They get to know each other and there's a deep bond,
Deep
with
bond.
the families. And so I think that's super cool. And I agree with you because Latinos, Latinas are so diverse and we come from so many backgrounds. It's hard. It's hard to find that connection and cohesion. And it's sort of a rhetorical question of what bonds us, really, right? Like what bonds Latinos? We come from different backgrounds. We have different histories in terms of each country's history, politically very different. Languages are different, right? So it's kind of like,
Yeah.
okay, like what is the thing? What is the thing that unites us all? Because we are so different. It's complicated. But
Complicated. For
yeah.
sure, for sure. And then we're all different shades.
Oh yeah.
You mentioned,
People
hey,
don't
I'm
get it.
Cuban
Yeah.
American, but I can't tell you how many
Yeah.
Cuban Americans and Cuban natives will say, wow,
Yeah.
you don't, well, not so much the natives, especially now, because there's such a big black population in Cuba. But
Mhm.
here, folks will look at me and go, you don't look Cuban. And I go, wow, what does that mean?
What does that
Because
mean?
it's
Yeah.
a Caribbean island. So how many different shades?
Yes.
And I'm sure Dominican people go through the same, but
Oh
from
yeah.
my experience and my perspective, it's still a thing.
Totally.
And I don't, and look at the negrita behind me. That's
I love
Celia.
Celia. Oh
Yeah.
yes.
So I
Oh,
can't, when folks ask me that question, I go, wow, really?
it's
What do you
incredible. And
mean?
it's so true. Like usually people will pick up on the fact that I'm Latina fairly quickly, but I've also gotten, asked like, oh, are you Egyptian? Are you Italian? Are you right? Like different, different,
Funny.
totally different countries, which is it's funny and cool. But exactly, I think it just goes to show like there's not just one look, right? Like we
No.
come in all different shades and hair textures and eye colors and yeah,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
it's amazing. But you're so right that people who don't know, they don't know, right?
No.
And especially, so I'm teaching right now like Central American studies, and that's such a
Very
big thing that
cool.
we talk about is like racialization. Why is it that people erase indigenous communities like all the Mayan people in Guatemala? They're the majority of the population, but they have no representation and no voice, not really.
Wow.
Or Afro descent people, right, in different countries. For example, Brazil, of course, has a huge population. Um, yeah, other Central American countries too. Anyway, but it's true. Like people don't realize like the complexity of race and identity in these different places. It's super fascinating, and I love that image of Celia. She's
Mhm.
amazing. What the greatest, like the greatest. Um,
Yes.
I was very, very blessed. I got to see her in concert before she passed, like a
Oh,
couple, probably like a
right.
couple years before she passed. And she was incredible. That was like, it was at the Hollywood Bowl too. That was one of the greatest,
Wow.
greatest nights ever. It was so fun.
She had one of the most powerful voices.
Oh yeah, her
I know that
presence.
she's
Oh,
often imitated, but will
oh,
never be
never
duplicated.
one of
Period.
one. No, the
That's
woman was
it.
one of one. She's legend, like truly a legend in her
And it's just
in her
amazing that
singing.
you can be yourself and still be very
Yeah.
successful, right? Because I think, especially in those
Yes.
times, it was you have to
Yes.
fit a mold, and she
Hmm.
broke that mold. And her powerful voice, her unique look,
Yeah.
everything about her was super, super strong
So
and
fabulous.
great
Yes.
representative for all of us women,
Yeah. I
for
think of
sure.
Celia and I think of, there's been many iconic
Mhm.
Latinos. I think of Celia, I think of Juan Gabriel, I think of,
Yes.
Vicente Fernandez, like different people that are just like their presence, like
Yeah.
you cannot duplicate. Selena, of course, you cannot duplicate them.
Yeah.
Like they're just
No.
so unique and so special. It's very cool. Yeah.
One of the benefits to, well, Celia never had children of her own. And
Oh, that's right.
actually, I think that was a good thing, because I think a lot of those icons wind up having kids, and their kids can never live up to who they
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
And it just complicates their lives so much because they have to constantly hear about their dad or their mom. And
It's
so
interesting. Yeah.
she
Yeah.
made that conscious decision not to have a family because, as they say, the road ain't no place to have a family.
That's so,
And
yeah.
so she made, for some of us, right, with all the generational trauma and all the stuff that we talk about, she said, you know what, I'm going to opt out of causing that for anybody.
Totally.
But she gave her
Wow.
gift to us, and here we are.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's, that's one of the things that's so beautiful when I think about, for example, like music, books, like film, all these things, they live on forever. That like
Forever.
when someone is able to create and be creative and they leave their mark. I mean, it's yeah, I love that. I think it's so cool. And that's right. I forgot that she didn't have children of her own.
Didn't have
Another
children.
person who also, I mean, she's, still alive, thank goodness, Dolly Parton. Like she decided not to have children. She doesn't have
I didn't know
children.
that. I didn't realize
Yeah,
she hadn't had
yeah. She also
kids.
didn't have children. So really fascinating, right? Oh, Oprah, another person.
Yes.
So again, it sounds like a very conscious decision that basically like they realized that their life was like what's that term, larger than life, that
Right.
their mission was larger than life, and having children, they probably couldn't, to be honest, probably couldn't dedicate the time and energy that children would need and sacrifice their career or where they could see their career going. So I think that's probably, who knows, right? But that seems to be like the consistent message from a lot of these like big huge stars.
Oh my
So
goodness.
interesting.
I mean, you can't be everything to everyone. If you see me being
It's
very
hard.
successful in my career,
Yeah.
I'm absolutely failing at home, and vice versa,
You
because
know,
there's no such thing as balance. I'm going to
it's a lie.
say it.
Yeah.
And, yeah, it's a lie.
Yeah, it's I've heard a couple of people phrase, say something similar in terms of saying, you can't have balance. Balance is a myth. And then you can have everything, but not at the same time.
Exactly.
Right? Like you can have this, like right, like so career going super well, super active, doing all the stuff, but maybe, stuff is going on at home, or vice versa. When you're like all in, super focused at home, it's like, oh, maybe we're dropping the balls of career stuff. Who knows? But I've heard that from several people, like mentors and things, that it's very hard. It's very, very hard to be overextended or to try to do everything for everybody, especially for women. I think it's
Yeah.
especially
And
challenging.
what I've learned is also in relationships, right? Personal
Mm.
relationships, romantic relationships. Some
Mm-hmm.
folks require a lot of dedication and time, and
Right.
or they don't want you to be more successful than they are.
Oh
So
yeah.
it's just,
The
there's no such thing.
jealousy, yeah.
Yeah.
The jealousy, the comparison,
Yeah.
which one would hope doesn't exist. Like this is like I'm speaking in heterosexual terms, but anyway,
Yes.
right. But unfortunately, it does happen, right? Where a
Yes.
man gets jealous, a man feels insecure because a woman's more successful, making more money. Not everyone, but it does happen.
It
So
happens.
so interesting, yeah. Oh my goodness. Oh, this is so great. I love it.
Yay.
This has been super great, Grace.
Super great.
Let's see. Oh yeah. So circling back for a second to religion. So I love that you shared that you're Roman Catholic and that your family also is, active in the church and things like that. And right. So at the time that we're filming this, and you mentioned Pope Francis has recently passed away. And so we're getting to get ready for the conclave, which is like the big official voting meeting that they do at the Vatican. Super fascinating, amazing. We're like literally living in a historical moment right now. And so I'm curious. I'm curious too to see who they choose, who they pick, where the Holy Spirit guides. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think they chose
yeah.
very well last time.
Mm.
So I'm
Yes.
encouraged by their
Yes.
choices, knowing that the Roman Catholic Church has been in trouble for quite some time and declining in membership.
Yeah.
And so everything that as a matter of fact, my local church, it looks like they're replacing the head priest, or maybe he's retiring. And so there's a younger man now that is one of the best public speakers
Fabulous.
I've ever been
Wow.
witness to in a Catholic church. Usually it's a massive snooze fest. I have to bump my kids and go, wake up, I had to stop
We've all
playing
been there.
on your phone, right?
We've all been
Because
there, yes.
I have to sit on my hands, so even I don't doom
Right.
scroll on my phone
Right,
in
right.
church sometimes. And growing up, I was in the choir, right? So I forgot to mention that I was in the choir.
I love it.
So I was in church 24/7, and that was a good experience for me because I saw the good, the bad, and the ugly. We had some priests that stepped out of line for sure, and one of them was a Latino. Shame on him. So that sort of ruined it for everybody.
It's so
But
disappointing. Yeah.
and so it's so ridiculous. And those folks, unfortunately, they don't get in trouble. They get reassigned or whatever happens. So I think that so it's encouraging with this new sort of way of running the Catholic Church that someone that's more unifying is very important, and get these kids back in church because that old droning on and I don't know if they'll ever let these guys get married. But we have to look at things differently. The Greek Orthodoxy, they get married. The rabbis get married. Everybody's got a husband and a wife or whatever partner they have. But we're we're the most stringent of all of them.
Yeah.
And so I don't know that that's working for us. So maybe and the recruitment overall, not only to the church and attendance, but to the actual faith, for the calling to be to the priesthood.
Oh, it's declined so much. Absolutely.
So much.
People are not becoming nuns. Like women are not becoming nuns. Men are not becoming priests. Like, no, thank you. Right. It's a lot. I mean, granted, of course, like it's always been a sacrifice, right? It's always been a sacrifice. But now, especially, that's hard. Like that's a big ask. It's a big ask, and I agree with you. Like it can be, that's one of the things that makes me so frustrated is like when I go to church and the homily is the most boring, dry, lame thing I've ever heard. I'm like, y'all try, put a little effort into this. Like, that's why nobody wants to come to church anymore. Everyone's like bored out of their mind. Like the homily is the small window of opportunity that you can really engage, right? That's it. Like, that's all you've got, because of course, the way that Mass is structured, it's pretty it's pretty pre-programmed, it's a liturgy, right? We have a beginning, we have the, Eucharist, we have all that stuff. We have like published books that have like the reading of the week. I mean, it's all kind of like very a well-oiled machine. Yeah, it's a well-oiled machine, very pre-programmed. Okay. And so it's true. Like and I don't know, I feel like it's I should say there's so much going on right now. There's so much, I mean, that's needless to say, right? That's an understatement. There's so much happening. It's a lot for adults, right? Like, I think it's safe to say, like, it's a lot for adults to handle and to deal with. I can't imagine being a young person right now, being expected to like get good grades in school, plan for your future, do this, do that, etc. On top of everything that's going on. Like, it's a lot. That's a lot. And of course, I mean, I think you'll know what I mean by this. I think that like with my generation, etc., we were like the last ones who had a life before the internet, right? Like we remember life before the internet. We remember before having like the internet on our phone. I remember the beginning of like, for example, like AOL dial-up, they'd send you a CD. So gosh, crazy, right? Remember? Yeah, exactly. You'd have to use a phone line. Yeah, it would like clog up the phone line back in the day, right? Back in the day. And so it's like, I cannot imagine the stress and the bullying and all the junk that these young kids have to deal with. It's a lot. And so I would hope, right? What are the systems of support? Family, friends. Hopefully kids have like some kind of like friendship group, that treats them well. And then church, if they're lucky, right? Like that could be the church community. And it's true. So many people that I've talked to, that they grew up in the church or their families were really involved in church, it meant a lot, like it really, even if they're not practicing now, right? Even if they're not going every Sunday as an adult, that foundation, right? That laying the bricks of the foundation was so important. And
I go back to the Greeks because they have a system for the youth called Goya, and it's an acronym for something that I don't know off the top of my head, but it's about community and have these kids kind of growing up together in the church. So where we had
Yeah.
Sunday school, right? I mean, we didn't do Sunday school. I don't know about Latinos doing Sunday school, but we
Right.
definitely did not. But they have Goya, and Goya, they're doing the Greek dances. They're doing the
That's so
everything, the day before Palm Sunday, they're making the crosses for all the
Wow.
elderly. So, and so I put my two kids in Catholic school because they were really struggling in the public school. They were just so, it was like the wild, wild west. There were so many things being allowed that, quite frankly, kids shouldn't be exposed
it's wild,
to.
right?
The drugs and the copulation happening, in public. I mean, just kids during those years just get very wild and crazy and reckless.
No.
And so kids need, and we all do, actually, we all need routine and order and systems in place where everybody is sort of, understanding where they fit in the puzzle pieces.
Exactly.
So
finding a place.
When I pick them up from school, sometimes I pick them up early because I'll walk into the school and all of a sudden I have to stop in the middle of the hallway because it's time for prayer. And they ring a bell and it's just like the loudest thing you've ever heard. And it sounds so holy and so everybody starts praying. They stop what they're doing. They start praying. It doesn't matter what they're doing. You could be on your way to the bathroom. Stop and start praying. And I have to tell you that it's one of the most beautiful things you've ever seen because even, let's say you're having a bad thought in that moment or you had a bad moment, all of a sudden it's almost like a meditation, right?
Yeah.
Stops you right in your tracks, resets you, and now you're in a different mindset, right? And so I started crying.
It's kind of cool.
I said, oh my gosh, I can't believe that they get this moment.
That's cool.
Because it's very overwhelming to be an adult, but to be a teenager, and especially right now in this society, it's got to be, oh my gosh,
a mess.
So, so they were not thriving in the public school, and now, especially my youngest, he's doing tremendous. And
wow. Oh, I'm glad. I mean, I'm so happy to hear that it was a positive, I'm saying like there was a positive move. That's amazing. That's fantastic.
Yeah. I did not want my kids in Catholic school. I thought it was too rigid. I always assumed that the public school education was much more advanced, which in certain ways it is. But they're too advanced in other aspects.
Interesting.
Where, there's just too much going on. But anyway, all exciting things.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, no, it's so true, right? In certain aspects, I don't think anyone wants children to grow up so fast. Like there's things that are for adults. I'm sorry. You know what I mean? Like you will learn when you need to learn, like you'll find out when you need to find out. But yeah, it's like, just that sense of like preserving childhood a little bit, a little bit. I don't know.
And I think that Hispanics, Latinos as a people, we tend to be a little bit more, traditional about certain things. And so when you're in a public school system, you are, you're remembering that your values and your systems at home, now they're exposed into the general public. And so,
different,
whatever it is that's going on, that can't even be regulated in terms of behaviors and things that people say. If you're in a Catholic school, you get in trouble if you say an F word. But if you're a public school, that's not a priority for them. Everybody says an F word. But that may not be your values at home. So now you're having to have that conversation. And listen, I have a potty mouth. but I tell my kids, you're not an adult. Sorry, I earned the potty mouth status. And I know they do it in front of their friends. I'm not naive. However, I just want them to learn that there are many more vocabulary words than F words.
Yeah, exactly.
Or better F words than the ones that you're using. So that's
my goodness. Amazing. Yeah, amazing. Fantastic. That's so true. I love that. I think that's great that you're able to, talk with them and that this has been like a good, experience for them so far. That's wonderful. Cool. All right. Speaking of children, so one of the things that I like to talk about on the podcast is the inner niña. I think for many of us, especially as first generation, second generation Latinas, some of us have had to grow up very fast. We've had like a lot of responsibility, put upon us. And so I really like to use kind of this last part of the podcast as a space, an opportunity for guests to share, what advice would you give? So what advice would you give not only your inner niña as far as like, what would you tell her, now that you're grown up, and what advice would you give her? And then also just for Latinas in general, like what important message would you like to share for like young Latinas today? Because as we were talking about, like this life is crazy, the society's gone wild, and so
Wow.
what are some things that you would share with young women?
Well, for young women now, I think they're very in a great position because that authentic self thing
Mm-hmm.
that never existed when we were growing up, you know,
Right,
you had to fit a mold. If you
right.
wanted to fit in with Becky and her crew, you had to be blonde and skinny. And I remember
Yeah.
when I was 125 pounds and I thought I was fat.
Oh my gosh.
And so now, you know, body positivity is a thing and
Yeah.
being your authentic self is a thing. So this is the moment. Capture that moment, enjoy it, be
Mm-hmm.
that person that you're meant to be because, you know, there's that stigma is sort of
Mm-hmm.
gone. You know,
Mm-hmm.
there's still jerky people out there that are going to judge
Sure.
you if you are, you know, the only girl wearing a ninja costume when the other girls are wearing princess costumes. And it's funny, I'll just use my daughter as an
Yeah.
example because she is myself many years ago.
Oh, yeah.
When she was little, she was the girl that always wore the ninja. I mentioned the ninja costume among the princesses because that was her. She was
That was her
SpongeBob
style.
one year.
Oh, I love
She was
it.
ninja. Then she was one of those minion people, and every year she was
That's so cute.
everything but the girly
The girly pink
costume
princess.
girl.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love it.
She hated
Oh.
princesses. She played basketball. And so I think trying to make your kids fit a mold, it doesn't work. And
Yeah.
we really enjoyed that part of her and let her be. And so
Oh.
letting her have that uniqueness about her,
Yeah,
it was not
exactly.
only endearing, but it's empowered her in that taking her
That's
into her
awesome.
young adulthood.
Yeah, I
So
love
I
it.
wouldn't say anything to any other young woman or myself that I don't tell my daughter is go
I love
on
it.
and be your best, baddest self because, you know, you could be the first whatever, fill in the blank instead of being a copycat of somebody else. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's the
Mm-hmm.
most important thing and makes you happier.
Mm-hmm.
Just do your thing.
Exactly. I agree with that 10,000% as far as, be yourself, be
Yeah.
yourself, whatever that is. Like if you're into ping pong, be the greatest ping pong player.
Yeah.
If you're into like painting, if you're into
Yes.
cooking, if you're into like building robotics, I don't know, whatever,
Yes.
do that. And it's true. I think sometimes we get shy or we feel scared. What are they going to say? They're going to bully me. They're going to do this. They're going to do. No, you really, I think it's true. Like as we get older, we realize like, who cares?
Right.
Who cares? I'm going to do it anyway,
Yeah. So one of
yeah.
the things that we don't teach kids, and it's
Hmm.
something that, you know, there's so many books and podcasts about confidence. Actually, there's one woman who inspired me who was a former client of mine, and she has a podcast.
Oh,
It's
wow.
called
Hmm.
Confidence Creative by Heather
Nice.
Monahan. So Heather
Nice.
talks about confidence, and she has all these master classes on how to
Hmm.
develop confidence. But really, that comes from a young age.
Yep.
It's hard to teach an adult confidence if they never had that. So
Hmm.
really drilling that into their minds,
Hmm.
boys and girls, everybody, when they're younger, because that confidence is what's going to help you through those very difficult moments and knowing how to be powerful in everything that you do. And without that confidence, you are, you know, and it's
Totally.
just hard to teach that. Some people are born with it because I have three different children in this home, and one of them has so much confidence. I go,
Wow.
tone that your confidence down a notch, but that's actually the wrong thing to say
It's
because then
interesting.
you start developing that little chip that says,
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
should tone myself down for other people.
Hmm.
I
I should
should tone
hide. I should,
no.
yeah,
So I
yeah,
actually, and I'm still
yeah.
learning because we have all those learned behaviors that we need to
Mhm, mhm,
toss that our
mhm,
parents
mhm.
drilled in. Everybody tells you keep
Right,
quiet.
right.
That's the only thing about the school system in general, right? Whether
Mhm.
it's Catholic school or it's public school, we are teaching kids to be quiet all day and to sit for
Yeah,
hours upon end
it's
with no
true.
end and just,
It's
oh my
true.
gosh, it's like prison.
Yeah,
Mental more than anything
yeah,
than physical. So
yeah. It's so true. Yeah, unfortunately, like, yeah. I hate to say it, especially in the school system, it's designed to kind of dim your light, to make us all the same. It's
yes,
wild, actually. It's like we
yeah,
want 30 little robots, like 30 little people who will be good capitalists, right?
yeah,
That's kind of what it's
yeah.
designed
It's designed
for.
to, yes. was
So
funny because I'm a loud laugher, right? I was a cackler. And,
nice.
my own mother would be like, oh my God, that laugh of yours. And so as I got
I love
older,
it.
I would try to not cackle so much and go, oh my God, I have
Oh,
to lower my voice.
yeah.
But my voice is what's, made my career. So isn't that
You see?
funny?
It's I love that. No, I've been told my whole I feel like I've been told my whole life that I'm too loud. My mom all the time is like, "You're so loud, da, 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 da. Like I hear your voice all the way over here." I'm like, "Bueno," like it's just like too
Yep.
bad.
Yeah.
And right, and now it's been very useful for podcasting, right? Like
Isn't
talking
that
and
funny? Yeah.
it's ironic, right? And then even in teaching, like I'm in a classroom sometimes I have to project in front of like 100 people, or like be in front of a group of 50 people teaching 30 whatever, and I'm totally comfortable with it.
That's awesome.
Whereas someone, for example, where someone else would feel nervous. Oh my God, they're looking at me. Oh, anyway, it's incredible how that can be, right? The things that we're critiqued for are actually our biggest gifts. So
Gifts. Yeah. And
I
you don't
love
want
it.
people falling asleep in your class either.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. This was
Awesome.
amazing. Oh my
Thank
gosh, Grace, thank you so
you.
much. This was
And where are my hoops for
lovely.
you?
Yay, hoops,
So
hoops. Yes,
excited.
gold hoops. I love it.
Gold hoops and
That's
God.
amazing. Oh, this was wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. So, Grace, where can they find you? Where can the good folks find you
Oh,
online,
yes.
social media and
So,
things? Yeah.
especially on Instagram, I am at
Insta.
the Radio Lady. So, find me, the Radio Lady,
Yes.
on Instagram. And so, I'm
Mm-hmm.
happy to connect with you
Perfect.
and, meet all sorts of people and make new friends and help
Yeah.
you if you need anything in terms of advertising or brands that are looking to connect with 20 million plus US Hispanic consumers.
So
Thank you.
cool. Amazing. Yes. Thank you so much, Grace.
And if you
So
want
I'll
to
make
talk
sure
about
to.
God, let's talk
Yes,
about God.
exactly. I love it. Yeah, it's wonderful. It's always fun to talk about faith and stuff. I love that. It's
Yes.
my favorite thing. So thank you so much for
Thank you.
being on the show today. I will make sure to link your social media handle and everything in the show notes. And yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Have a great
everybody.
day. All right.
Yes,
Great spending
thank
time
you
with
for being
you.
here. Yes, thank you for being here. Thanks, folks, for listening. Gold Hoops and God podcast. Don't forget, new episodes are available every Wednesday, everywhere you listen to your podcast, including Spotify, iHeart, um, iTunes, trying to think of all the platforms, and also the video of the interviews is going to be available on YouTube. I always post those on Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Pacific. So yes, so thank you, everyone.
Bye bye.
Bye.